Dear audience, thank you for joining us today for this exciting and insightful webinar. I see we have participants from across the globe, USA, EMEA, and even a few from APAC. Thank you for being here. And with us today, we have three brilliant speakers, all cybersecurity experts. Each one of them are renowned specialists in his field. As a matter of fact, did you know that over 2/3 organizations worldwide were affected by ransomware last year? It is the largest cyber risk we see nowadays. So today, we'll learn together the inner workings of a ransomware attack. First, Yoav, a global intelligence analyst at Check Point, will present ransomware trends and the threat landscape in the first half of 2023. Our second speaker is Tom, an experienced incident response team lead in EMEA. He will deep dive into a ransomware attack and show the step-by-step process that hackers follow to extort your data. And finally, our third speaker, Pete, is a seasoned CISO in America. He will demonstrate how CISOs and SOC teams can efficiently reduce their attack vectors to break the ransomware lifecycle. Again, thank you for joining us today, and let the show begin.
Hello, everybody. My name is Yoav Pinkas. I'm an intelligence analyst for Check Point Research. And today I'll briefly review the situation for what we consider the number one threat for businesses today, which is ransomware. So ransomware is dangerous, firstly, because of its costs. The cost of extortion money, the loss of production days, the threat or the dangers of lawsuits from both employees and customers, but also by its prevalence. Now, on the left, we can see the view of the attacks, cyber attacks that we see on our gateways. So we see that the most common attacks are multi-purpose malware, botnets, and bankers, then info stealers that have seen a large increase in the previous year. This is an average of 2022 in comparison to previous year. And only down here we see ransomware. But actually that's a little bit deceiving. The reason is that we block the attacks on a preliminary stage of info stealers and multi-purpose malware. But on the right, you can see the statistics from Check Point IR team, which are called to customers and non-customers and catastrophic events. And there you see that about half of the reasons, half of the cases where IR team is called into action are concerning ransomware. Now, ransomware has changed in two dimensions in the past 7 or 10 years. If in the past, we would see the first dimension is the type of targets and the strategies of how to extort money from the victims. So if in the past we've seen pray and spray attacks where like CryptLocker in 2013 or WannaCry in 2017, where attackers just send ransomware to multiple targets, not selecting them. Now we see another strategy. Ransomware these days attacks selected targets. They do their research, they look into the revenue and the business intelligence of the targets. They stay for longer periods in the target before they go into the final stage of encryption, sometimes weeks, sometimes even months. What they do in the systems, in the networks while they're there is look for valuable assets like backup servers or Active Directories. Once they find them, they encrypt the information, but they also, before they encrypt, they steal the information, they take it out, and then they extort the victims with threats of publishing this information. The ransom demands are now in the millions, and the threat actors are now, since victims, in order to pay large amounts, they need to rely that once they pay, that they both get their encryption keys and their data is deleted. An important asset of the attacker is their reputation. So threat actors now take a lot of emphasis on maintaining their reputation. They have customer service units that make sure that, or they try to make sure that the victim would be sort of satisfied at the end of the day. In order to maintain this strategy, threat actors have an infrastructure of sites and servers, both on the dark web and in other places. This is an example of a leak site or a shame site of a threat actor called Lockbit. Basically, what you see here are ads. Once a victim has been attacked, their file stolen, and then encrypted. They receive a ransom note. If the ransom note and the negotiations don't evolve into payment, then the threat actor would publish an ad on the shame site. You can see a clock and a countdown for 12 days and 9 hours before all your information will be leaked. So that's one major dimension in which the ransomware ecosystem has changed. It's now directed and double and sometimes triple extortion strategies. The second way that this ecosystem has changed is that if 5 or 7 years ago, we would look at threat actors, ransomware actors that would do the whole attack cycle by themselves, from developing the encryptors, achieving initial foothold on victims, attacking them, conducting the negotiations, maybe even laundering the extorted funds. Now it's a much more complicated situation. Basically, what we have is a model of ransomware as a service. We have threat actors like Clop, Lockbit, Alpha. They develop and maintain the ransomware and the encryptors they make for the infrastructure, and many times they do the negotiations and collect, and they give their prestige, their reputation to assure the victims that they would receive their decryptors. The ransomware as a service threat actors recruit affiliates. These are the ones that produce the attacks. Basically, some of them we see use more than one ransomware. So we would see an affiliate that could alternate between Lockbit and Clop, or just as an example. But even the affiliates don't do the entire work themselves. They outsource the actual breaking in. We have other actors who are initial access brokers. They're the ones that work inside the networks. They understand what's the type of victim that they have. They might work for persistence inside and look for assets. And even them, they do not hack into systems themselves. They go on dark markets and buy information that would allow them to break in. The information in the markets is produced by less technical actors, the ones who use info stealers, and they could be the ones stealing passwords from your browsers or just keystrokes and that kind of information. They obviously do not develop the information, the systems themselves, the info stealers themselves, but they buy it from info stealer vendors like Agent Tesla, Phonebook, and Lockybot. And then we have like semi-legitimate actors that give the infrastructure to all this. So you could have command and control providers that the majority of their business comes from selling it to criminals, and we could consider them as part of this ecosystem. Cryptocurrency launderers, and the markets themselves. These are a couple of examples of how this looks like in dark web markets. On the right, you can see sales of full details of individuals. So there's a Melissa from the USA. If we pay $1, we get all her information, which would allow us to try and hack into maybe her personal computer and then to her corporate computer. Here you can see someone selling access to a Canadian company whose revenue is $160,000. It's a law firm. And on the left, you see a profile of someone who sells information on the dark web, so you can evaluate if they're reliable or not. So it's really a big ecosystem rather than a competition between a single individual or a single group and a victim. So in the first half of 2023, we've seen 48 active double extortion ransomware groups responsible for more than 2,200 victims. Number one in the most active threat actor list is Lockbit, and then Alpha and Clop. Lockbit alone was responsible for more than 500 victims. That's an increase of 20% from last year. We publish all this information also on our website. This is our mid-year report. We have 2 reports a year with all the data and analysis. You can go online and look at it yourself. Going back to the information of threat actors. So as I said, Lockbit was the most active one. When I say that Lockbit was the most active one, we need to remember that it operates many affiliates, and many affiliates use Lockbit to attack. So one of the success factors for a threat actor is how many affiliates they can recruit. Some affiliates operate with more than one threat actor. They deploy whichever ransomware they feel is more in place for them at the moment of attack. And another phenomena that we've seen in the last 6 months is something of mega attacks. So it's not the first time that we've seen this, but really something very prominent this year. Lockbit had an attack that they made through a cloud service provider, Cloud 5051, which they hacked, or again, one of their affiliates, bringing down 60 victims. Clop had 2 mega attacks, both of them through file transfer tools. One of them directed at MoveIt, which exploited zero-day vulnerability. So, and these are really tools that, I mean, zero-day vulnerabilities are tools that have been used by APTs and states. But now, since this ecosystem is so profitable, it's worth using even here. So another analysis that we do is geographical analysis of victims. We can see that almost half of the victims in the first month of 2023 were from the US. This explains the emphasized interest that law enforcement, that US-led law enforcement entities have in ransomware. We've seen a large operation take down Hive, a major actor, at the beginning of the year. Another interesting thing that we see here is a substantial number of Russian victims, Russian company victims. This is something that we didn't see in the past. Many threat actors, cyber threat actors, prefer not to attack Russian, ex-USSR, or in generally systems that have Russian as a default language. But this has changed in the past 6 months, mostly because of the activity of a single threat actor called Malas Locker. Another interesting analysis is the most attacked industries that we see by ransomware. That's on the left. We can see that manufacturing, retail, and wholesale and software are the most attacked sectors. This is different from what we see when we analyze all the attacks that we see on our gateways, with general attacks that involve also espionage, commercial espionage, info stealing, and other types of attacks. We see that the education, government, and healthcare sectors are the most attacked. But since in the US and in some other countries, it is illegal to pay for ransomware, it's illegal even to negotiate with the ransomware threat actors, then government and military entities obviously cannot pay. Therefore, they're less targeted by ransomware threat actors. Maybe the major developments in H1 2023 are concerning mega attacks that we talked about further ransomware development into other operating systems, and evasion techniques. And that's it for the media report regarding ransomware. Thank you very much.
Amazing, Yoav. Thank you for the condensed intelligence on ransomware attacks in the first half of the year. Now Tom will deep dive into our ransomware attack that his team experienced firsthand. Tom, the stage is yours.
Hi all, thank you all for being here and showing interest in this topic. My name is Tom De Laat and I'm the EMEA lead for the Checkpoint Incident Response team. On a daily basis, my team assists enterprises worldwide in a proactive and reactive manner in dealing with incidents. And because we're in the position where we assist companies big and small and throughout all verticals, that we often see situations that could have been prevented. In this brief presentation, I'll walk you through a high-level overview of a case where we recently dealt with. So first, small introduction. We'll talk about the company overview, and then we'll deep dive in the anatomy of an attack and the modus operandi. After that, we will walk you through the reaction, impact, and outcome of that case, followed by some lessons identified, coupled with prevention strategies, and in the end, a small word about how to be ready in our IR services. So, since we're assisting so many companies worldwide, it was hard for me to decide which case to use as an example. Over the last 3 weeks, we in EMEA had several companies being ransomed who reached out to us. We had a hospital group of 7 different hospitals, a public transportation company, a governmental agency, a retail company, and a big university. They were all of different sizes and spread out throughout whole EMEA. In the end, I chose a case in the manufacturing sector because it had a variety of fitting characteristics that to talk about. But it actually really doesn't matter which vertical or industry. In our daily encounters, we often see the same challenges and struggles for all those different companies. And in a lot of cases, it kind of boils down to the fact that they have difficulties in managing and maintaining their security posture due to a variety of reasons. So in the team, we see a lack of skilled security personnel with the customers. We see customers having difficulties in managing and operating their operational security products due to overlapping capabilities in that ever-growing technology stack. And we almost always see enterprises having difficulties in visualizing and being aware of what is going on in their environment. We see a lack of skilled security personnel. Well, this leads to not having visibility of the full scope of a possible attack. And visibility and awareness is key, of course, in these situations, as it can give you the chance to react and prevent the situation from escalating. As you can see, this customer was a somewhat larger mid-sized enterprise with about 3,000 hosts and a server estate of about 150 servers. They also had assets in AWS and Azure. And as usual, a rather small IT team that needed to manage all of this. And although they did their best, on a Monday morning, they were being faced with the following challenge. This is what companies often see before they call us. When in this case, when you're faced with a lot of emotions and questions that start roaming your thoughts, what are you going to do? Who are you going to involve? Who needs to be notified in the company? Do we need to cut internet? Where to look for evidence? Do we have logs? Do we have backups? Is core business impacted? And if so, how much? And of course, how do you get overview and insight in the situation? Are we able to recover? And if so, how long will it take to be back up with business-critical applications or infrastructure? Can we deal with this on our own, or do we need to call somebody to assist? And if so, who? Where to look for? And many more things. We still see this on a daily basis, and thus this is how many of our days start in the team. Picking up the phone and jumping in a call where we find a customer in need, panicking for guidance and assistance. And so we go to work. Let me walk you through the flow of events of this attack. In this case, it all started with a phishing email. This email enticed the user in clicking on the link, as it gave him access to a site claiming to present a PDF. At access, the user was presented with a OneDrive login page, and the rest is history. Up to this day, we still see phishing being the initial vector in a lot of our cases, simply because it works. That, together with web shells and exploits on publicly vulnerable services. And also in this case, we saw in parallel numerous web shells on their Exchange server being dropped months before the phishing attempt. We did not see any proof of exploiting these web shells in this case, and we found out that there were still remnants of the old proxy shell exploit chain, but they were never used. Most likely dropped by an access broker, and the access might have never been sold on the dark web by someone. And that's another thing we see a lot of these days. Exchange still being vulnerable for proxy shell, and numerous old vulnerabilities, of course. Now, once the threat actor got access, we saw them searching for a string called cpassword in the sysvol folder. For those that don't know this, sysvol is the domain-wide share in Active Directory to which all authenticated users have access, read access. It contains logon scripts and group policy data, which needs to be available anywhere in the domain. Now, why are threat actors sometimes still looking for this? Well, this cpassword is a manner in which allows administrators to set passwords through group policy. And the issue with this is that the cpassword is right there in a file, in this case, an XML file. It's encrypted, but Microsoft also published the key on their support site. So using this is not best practice, and it has severe security implications, as anyone with read access to the sysvol share can grab the key, crack it with a number of freely available tools. Microsoft did address this issue in a patch in 2014, but the patch did not address the already implemented policies. And thus we still see, up to this day, these policies being present in companies. In addition to that, we also saw them dropping mimikatz, and also that is still something default in the tool belt of those threat actors. After these actions, the threat actor ensured a more thorough persistence and started creating additional accounts. And they started deploying Cobalt Strike in the environment. Again, we still see Cobalt Strike being used in a lot of the incidents as a means of command and control, as it has a wide variety of post-exploitation capabilities. After the threat actor gained the initial foothold and the needed credentials, and they started moving laterally through the environment by deploying IP scanner, they conducted more internal phishing and started deploying Splashtop, AnyDesk, and some other more tools. While doing that, they also disabled the endpoint protection, and they started clearing the event logs in a structural manner in the whole environment. In the end goal for them boils down to gathering data that is important to you or your customers and exfiltrate that data. In this case, we saw them using rclone, which is a threat actor's favorite, combined with upload to Mega. After that, they simply deploy their ransomware, and the rest is history. So to tie all these things together, it kind of looked like this on a high-level perspective. So they gained access to the environment through a phishing attempt. They gained the needed credentials and privileges to dig them deeper into the network and started deploying their tools. They erased their traces as they moved through the environment, all while gathering data and started exfiltrating that. Data exfil is not always easy to prove, but in this case, we found artifacts and config files of the upload they used to Mega and rclone. Together with that, you can also see here the huge spike in outbound traffic from the environment in volumetric logs. And then again, the next step is obvious. The ransomware is being deployed and the company appears on the threat actor's leak side. So next to all the stories about highly advanced threat actors, this type of modus operandi is seen in an equal amount of cases in the team. Threat actors that don't act silently. They come in, and start being noisy just because they can. Now, the reaction, the organization did, however, do a couple of things right. They immediately started isolating and did a full rebuild of their endpoint estate. They called us, although after 2 days fiddling around, they still picked up the phone and reached out because it became too much of them. And they notified us and put priority on customer shipped systems because they had a supply chain to others. So they took up the responsibility. Our team reacted with a compromise assessment, a root cause analysis, and we deployed our managed detect and response tools. A root cause analysis has the goal to be able to lay out the full attack chain story and use that information to make solid recommendations towards the customer so that he can use those to improve his security posture, with the goal, of course, to try and minimize the chances of such an attack from happening again. Next to that, the compromise assessment has the goal to gain full visibility in the environment, determine where the threat actor was or still is active, and clean out the environment. You can also call it rebuilding or restoring trust in your environment. The managed detect and response capability, we use them to gain eyes and interactivity with the customer and the environment. It gives us eyes on console. It gives us a direct interaction capability, isolation, and remediation control in the customer's environment. The impact, however, was severe. The organization had a crippling attack. 3,000 hosts needed to be reconstructed. All the server estate was hit by ransomware and needed to be rebuilt. Their data was exfiltrated, valuable customer data. The battle rhythm that they needed to adhere to for several days, a 24/7, where the already small IT staff was really working hard to get the environment back up and running with our support, it all led to a 4 weeks recovery time, which in itself is not bad at all. This incident, however, accelerated the organization's security roadmap by 2 years. We often see that a customer first need to fall victim to a severe attack and then has C-level approval for very critical implementations in terms of security. Some lessons learned for the customer here were user awareness, always still important. MFA, it's not a silver bullet, but it's yet another obstacle that the threat actor needs to take. We still see this being either not or not well deployed for the full user estate in an environment. They did not have an additional email security solution implemented. Patching and patch management, easily said than done, but still very important. Endpoint protection, still up to date. We see endpoints being protected, but not fully tuned in terms of features. It doesn't help you if you have a decent endpoint protection, but you don't put all the protection features in enable mode. In this case, they had a password policy, an outdated password policy, alluding to the C password. They did not have application allow listing, so the threat actor could deploy anything they wanted to. They had not a decent detailed logging policy on their firewall, and they did not at all log, monitor, and alert in the right way. Obviously, they were resource hogged, and they did not have an IR plan or playbooks available. And the list goes on, of course. Now, thwarting ransomware is not rocket science, but it's not easy either. I often get the question to talk about trends, but as I don't have the bandwidth to look into those, I'm very happy that CPR is doing that brunt of the work. Now, trends tell you something, but I see people often focusing on the new hot and trendy top trend. What I can tell you is that we see those highly advanced actors who live off the land, and they do it quite well. But we also see, as in this example, threat actors who make mistakes, Google around, download tools while conducting the attack. They rerun adjusted commands because they made errors, but in the end, being noisy. We see web shells, phishing stolen account credentials, and public-facing vulnerabilities on a daily basis. We see a lot of those commercial off-the-shelf toolings like Cobalt Strike, but also the free and open source toolings. Some fully living off the land, others using whatever the environments provide. And as you see in this example, a lot of them are using remote monitoring and maintenance tools. Why? Well, because it's easy and it works. Some cover their tax, others don't. In this case, I often tell people that before ransomware nodes appear on your screen, the threat actor has to do several things. He needs to exploit an initial vector. He needs to gain access, install software, dump credentials. They need to move laterally, install some more software. They need to collect data, exfiltrate data, and in the end, deploy their ransomware. We can talk a long time about all these topics, but I'll keep it at this. It boils down to fixing your basics. Patching, it's more easily done than said, of course, but it's important. We see a lot of the vulnerabilities that are being exploited today are not the new hot and trendy or the latest ones, it's the older ones. We see a lot of those CVEs being exploited that are there for years. Endpoint protection. Deploy and decently configure an endpoint protection solution that you can trust and test it. We see too many cases where EDR solutions are deployed, but not decently configured. Often they're decently configured on the endpoints, but due to the fear of disrupting operational business, it's not fully deployed in the server segment. With all what leads to your most important assets being compromised there, of course. Logging and monitoring and alerting. Log in your environment. Make sure you get the needed logs of the endpoints and servers into a centralized location. And alert and monitor on them. Have eyes on console. In too many cases, we find that all the signs, all the alerts were kind of there, but the customer, the company, did not have the bandwidth nor the knowledge to look at the events, analyze them, and make their conclusions. Technical depth and complexity. With technical depth, I allude to the cost of shortcuts, quick fixes, and suboptimal decisions made during the development and maintenance of software or technology systems. A metaphorical way to express the long-term consequences of taking the easy route in the short term. This goes undoubtedly hand in hand with the ever-growing complexity of IT systems in today's world, of course, which leads to consolidation, or otherwise said, choosing the right technology stack and services for you. We often see companies struggling to gain that solid awareness of what is going on in their environment due to all the different solutions that are being used in the environment and that don't talk to each other. You can't take decisions, act swiftly in time of need when your intelligence is roaming all over the place. Important with these ransomware threats is be ready as much as you can be. Be proactive. We can support you in this in a proactive and reactive manner. If you have an incident, pick up that phone, know who to call, and let people with the knowledge assist you. Couple that with be proactive. Know what you need to protect. Conduct an attack surface mapping assessment. Look at your threat profile. Make standing IR plans and playbooks and conduct tabletop exercises. Coupled with a managed detect and response service that can take that weight of an ever-watching eye in your environment off your shoulders. Thank you.
Fascinating. Thank you, Tom. We rarely have the occasion to assist to a ransomware anatomy. There is so much we can learn from other victims and how to prevent the next attacks. So now we're reaching the last part of the webinar with our great guest, Pete, a global CISO in Americas. Pete has a broad experience at large 500 companies, and today he will share with us how to make a ransomware risk assessment to gain complete ransomware protection. Pete, be my guest.
Hello, my name is Pete Nicoletti, and I'm one of the global CISOs here at Checkpoint. And I've got a really interesting webinar and discussion topic to talk about today. We are going to talk about breaking the ransomware lifecycle, because right now, folks, we are losing the battle. 89% of successful ransomware and payouts are coming in through email. And we've got to figure out how to deal with that successfully. We can't keep paying off the criminals, and we can't keep having our businesses interrupted, our lives interrupted. And the problem also is we're getting very callous to this. We're seeing ransomwares happening almost every single day, and we just sort of start to ignore it. But we're not going to ignore it during this webinar. We're going to dive deep into all the issues related to the failures of our current security subsystem. So let's jump right into it. We've got a very detailed breakdown on at least 20 different failures of current technologies. And unless you're a Checkpoint customer, this should be very interesting to you. All right, so here's how it starts, folks. Criminals set up their enterprise with a website, a landing page. They're building custom code, 0 days. They're exploiting vulnerabilities in our servers, in our laptops, even in our security tools. So they create the website and they create the email. And now, folks, they're using artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. So now we have millions more expert English-speaking phishing email creators. They're also combining social media information and previously hacked information to create highly targeted phishing emails that end users just can't discern the difference between if it's real or it's not. So the criminals set up these domains, and frequently they're only a few days old. They send out the emails, and only a fraction of a percentage of people have to click on those emails for their criminal enterprise to pay off. So what happens? The first failure. We have lots of competition out there with email gateways, and I'm going to name them. We know we compete against Proofpoint and Mimecast and Barracuda and even Microsoft. And what happens is these new emails, these new targeted emails are passing through those protections. And what happens? It hits the inbox of the end user, and it's not stopped. Now, here's something that maybe a lot of the training companies don't want to hear, but training doesn't work, folks. No matter how much training you go through, the end user, if they see something that looks legitimate, they're not going to hover over the URL. They're not going to look. They're not going to pick it apart. And there's not a lot of email. Even email experts can be fooled by some of these new targeted phishing emails. So training, it's nice to have, and it might help you a little bit, but no, it's not going to help. The next failure is your desktop antivirus fails, because as you open that email up, communications are established back to that criminal enterprise. And that's failure number 3. The next failure is in all of your super, high moat and wall, your firewalls, your DNS, resolving your proxies, your IPSs. All those things are failing because now it's outbound traffic. And typically companies don't set up rules for outbound traffic. They say, okay, if the end user wants to go to that website, we're just going to let them. So a super duper failure right there. The IPS is allowing those attacks to go through, and it hits the criminal website. They send the code to the end user, and the end user is infected. Now, what happens then is quite terrible. That end user, the laptop is infected, and they start scanning the inside of the network. Now, if you're a regular user, you're going to be able to see parts of the network, but if you're a super user, an admin, you're able to see lots more part of the network, because a lot of companies haven't set up their segmentation, and they haven't prevented the ability to see all the hosts from a single workstation. So lots of failures occur here. That desktop antivirus fails because that malware is installed. It starts scanning. Now we've got east and west traffic scanning, because the first host that it infects starts looking for additional hosts east and west. And typically companies don't have micro-segmentation in place so that one segment is easily connected to another. Unpatched vulnerable servers. Not every company updates and patches with all the 0 days. And we see that, just in the last year alone, we've had over 240 Microsoft vulnerabilities in their applications and operating systems. So we know there's plenty of vulnerabilities that these attackers are exploiting. And then unless you have a very sophisticated host-based, antivirus and host-based intrusion prevention, those hosts are going to be infected. So here we are, we're in the middle of a terrible ransomware attack. Our hosts are being infected. And then what happens? The outbound connections from those hosts saying, hey, I'm infected. I now have the code installed on them. And those firewalls are saying, oh, that looks like regular traffic. We're going to let that through. The IPS has let it through. The DNS allows that resolution to that brand new website. And there's communication back to the website. And all of these logs should be going to a SIM. But we know that people aren't watching the SIMs as closely as carefully as possible. We also know that there's thousands of false positives that are affecting the SOC analysts, and they're going to miss something. And this whole sequence happens in seconds. So it doesn't matter even if they're watching live, because the infection has occurred and the ransomware is installed. And then the servers are encrypted at this point. And the other stage of the attackers are, they typically stop the backups from working or encrypt the backups. So your backups and restoration, efforts are going to be thwarted. And there it is. Your ransomware is interrupting your business. All your servers are locked up. And the next email you get is going to be them requesting Bitcoin. And we're seeing very sophisticated attackers looking at the size of the company that they've just attacked. They're looking at what their losses may be if they have cyber insurance, and they're negotiating starting with a high numbers, because they know that restoration is going to take days or weeks, and they're making those negotiations based on a high value of getting your operations and your reputation back on track. So here's how we fail. So how do we fix this? How do we not fund and embolden criminals? And, and that's the worst part of this, is that we're funding these criminals, and they're actually hiring better and better people. They're actually going to the universities and hiring right out of the universities and paying better than commercial enterprises, because they're making money. And they're in countries that we don't have extradition treaties at. So we have no facility to go after them and arrest them and put them in jail. So how do we break this? This ransomware lifecycle is terrible. We're spending billions of dollars. So let's talk about how we can break that life cycle. So let's upgrade the traditional resources with Check Point's integrated stack. Now, Check Point has the widest variety of security tools available, and it's all managed through a single console. So let's walk through that same scenario of the attackers sending a phish, a highly targeted phish, and let's see what preventions, because with Check Point, it's all about prevention. Let's see where the first step occurs. Boom, there it is. Email passes through other gateway defenses, other tools that are out there. But our new tool, we just bought a company about 2 years ago called Avanan, and it's called Harmony Email. And Harmony Email is the most advanced and highest efficacy tool that's available today. There's no better tool. We see it every day where customers install our tool. It takes about 3 minutes, click, click, click. It's API based, and the protection is going to be in place immediately. Now, we'll typically set it up and learn it and have it learn for a week or two to, make sure that we're not blocking things that are, business related. But the first day, the first minute, the first hour, we're going to see emails that the other tools, the other gateways, the other legacy tools allow through the system. So that's step number one. So it never even reaches the inbox. Now, the other cool thing about the Harmony Email is that we have a new patent out that combines both the Microsoft phishing box as well as our box. So now we're making the analyst and the security folks even more efficient, but where they only have to check one box to see the emails that are held up. So really a nice little efficiency. Nobody else has that. It's pretty nice, and our customers are loving it. So prevention right there, boom. Now, nothing's perfect, okay? Let's just say we're 99.99, but there's going to be something that gets through. And that's where our next stage of prevention occurs. The next stage of prevention occurs at the desktop or at the cell phone. The Harmony Suite is available to be installed directly on the PC, the laptop. We have a lot of customers out there that allow bring your own devices. And that's a terrible situation, because bring your own devices means check your own home email and browse your own crazy websites that are not corporate controlled. So we see a lot of our customers that are protecting their world by installing Harmony endpoint protection right on their cell phones and their bring your own laptops, and they're able to, save some money and allow those customers to use their own laptops, but protect those people accessing corporate resources. So right there, prevention. If the Harmony system sees that email being opened, and it's going to say, no, we're not going to that website. That is a known bad domain. And why do we know that? Because Check Point has the fastest threat prevention system in the world. We have hundreds of thousands of sensors out there collecting new threats in 0 days and new domains. But the difference between our threat feed is that it's enabled in 3 seconds. So our entire portfolio of products are updated literally in seconds with a new 0 day that we might see in Australia, or we might see in Australia, or wherever it may be. We're going to be able to see that and update our system. So in seconds, everyone in our entire environment and our customers are prevented from going to that website. So really interesting on the threat feed and how responsive it is. So it's also going to prevent you from putting in your credentials. So if it's a bank phish, you start typing in your credentials, it's going to say no. Or if it's a phish that's impersonating your own company, which we see quite often, it's going to prevent you from putting in your Active Directory credentials. So that's a big deal, being able to not have those Active Directory credentials shared. And that's what's happened with a number of very, very successful attacks here recently, is they share the Active Directory credentials and it's game over. So next stage of the game, it's prevention. Once again, prevention is Check Point's middle name. So the firewalls have been updated. The intrusion prevention systems have been updated within seconds from our threat cloud. And all of that communication is going to be shut down. So even if they're using a competing brand of endpoint tool and they're using Check Point firewalls, either cloud-based firewalls or our Quantum on-premise firewalls, we're going to prevent that traffic from going to those compromised websites. So it's a big, big deal. So all of that occurs, and all this evidence, all the evidence of both the email being prevented, the endpoint preventing it, the firewalls, the IPSs, the cloud-based, the proxies, all of those things are being sent to our centralized log server, and the SOC analysts are going, okay, there's another threat that was prevented, and we're sleeping at night. So it's really a nice thing for customers to have that prevention mindset. All right, so additional things that occur, more prevention at the host side. And then, of course, because Check Point has a very wide variety of services, we're gonna help our customers out with their zero trust strategy. And zero trust strategy starts with, number 1, authentication, number 2, microsegmentation. So if we just look what happened, recently in Las Vegas to the sites there with that were totally shut down and spent over $100 million in ransomware payments and outages, microsegmentation would have really prevented that super user from jumping into and affecting all the subsystems that companies was affected. So it's a terrible situation, but if you talk to Check Point, we're going to help you out with that zero trust strategy and your roadmap and walk you through how to update your multi-factor authentication, get that squared away, and then update you in the micro-segmentation area. So that's a super great area to fix. And it's really not that costly. So setting up additional firewalls that inspect traffic between segments is not a big deal. Setting up your intrusion prevention systems to prevent these types of attack, having your host protected with Harmony, not hard to do, very, very inexpensive, and it's going to prevent these kind of large-scale outbreaks and very, very costly events from occurring. And then finally, we're back to preventing that outbound connections. The IPSs are going to prevent it. The firewalls are going to prevent it. Once again, Checkpoint has a full range of tools that are going to extend into whatever cloud you have, whether it's Azure, whether it's Google, whether it's Amazon. It's right in the marketplace. Click, click, click. Within seconds, you're going to be able to protect the resources that are out there, as well as your premise-based resources and your endpoints. All right, so it's success. We are going to be able to prevent and stop ransomware before business interruptions, before there's costly recovery efforts. And we know the recovery efforts are typically extended. The average time to respond and do your restorations and get back on track is almost a month. It's 28 days. So who wants to have their business knocked offline and interrupted for that long and have the costs? The other thing that we see in the latest studies is the cost of a security program versus the cost of an outbreak is over 100 times higher. So spend a little bit of money, put the prevention tools in place from Checkpoint, from Harmony, email from Harmony endpoint, from Harmony on your servers to your firewalls, upgrade them at the cloud and at the endpoint, and be able to prevent this kind of thing. And yes, it's going to cost a little bit of money, but once again, who wants unplanned costs? Who wants to have their reputation impacted? Who wants to have their proprietary information stolen? Who wants to send out thousands and millions of notices to their customers saying, hey, we really value your security, but we blew it this time? Who wants to get another one of those letters? Well, Checkpoint customers don't send those letters out, and that's what this is all about. It's all about prevention. So what's your next step? Well, let's talk about Checkpoint. We're not just a product company, we're a service company. So we have a wide variety of tools and services that you can call and talk to us about. So our Infinity Security Platform, we've been talking about it for the last 10 or 15 minutes, and we have all those variety of security solutions. We have the biggest portfolio of security available. And we just added SASE. So for those folks that want the fastest and most secure SASE deployment, we just bought Perimeter 81. So that's a cool thing. And we also bought another small company that does SASE posture management. So quite a unique little tool to add right there. And then, we have global security services. So everything from incident response, managed 24/7. If you do have a problem, you're not a Checkpoint customer, yes, you can call us. We're going to give you a link here in just a minute to be able to click on and talk to our incident response folks. And a wide variety of services. We have everything from free workshops. We have about, I think by last count, about 30 different workshops. So if you're looking at multi-factor authentication or zero trust, or your cloud journey, or what should you do about endpoint or email or protecting hosts, or you're tired of your other security vendor being your security vulnerability, you're being hacked through your firewall. So we're seeing that a lot. We've got a lot of customers coming in from the competition, and we're going to be happy to talk to you, and we're going to be nice about it. So talk to our global services department. We've got everything under the sun, and we also partner with Checkpoint is exclusively through resellers. So you can either talk to your reseller, that's a Checkpoint reseller, or talk directly with us. And how do you get a hold of us? It's that easy. Scan the QR code. Now, normally I'm not a big fan of QR codes because they go anywhere, but you can trust this one. And if you're one of those paranoid people like me, you can write down that shortened email or shortened URL and connect right to a security expert and be helped immediately. We'd really like to talk to you about your challenges, because we are very confident of our products. Right now, we have the highest efficacy products out there. We're having, everything, whether it's Gartner Magic Quadrant or IDC or Forrester, or even the world's best place to work. Checkpoint is on fire, and we want to hear from you now. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to meeting and talking to all these prospects turning into Checkpoint customers.
Hi, Pete. How are you doing?
Hey, how's it going? Man, things are fantastic.
Fantastic.
Great session, especially the first two guys.
All great. No, it's so many insights. I think it's the many questions from the audience. So we'll take some questions here live. We have a few minutes left. I think about 3 minutes, so we can take a few questions and take from there. Lucky to have Pete with us today. Very specialist, so he really knows his voice. The first question: do organizations rely on their cyber insurance policies when paying for ransomware, or actively invest in cybersecurity solutions to prevent it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole point of cyber insurance, is to cover those, incident response costs, the notification costs, the extra experts coming in. But what happens is the insurance companies, they don't want to pay. Okay, their job is to make money. It's not to pay for ransomware. So they will look for exceptions. So if, for example, if they've asked you for evidence of certain protections and evidence of certain technologies in place, and you did not provide those, or they were not good enough, and they gave you a warning, there's going to be some ways that they're going to get out of paying. The other thing is there's a lot of exceptions. For example, if you're hacked by a nation state, a lot of insurance companies are not paying for nation state actors, even though attribution is very, very hard. One of the things that a lot of our customers are seeing, well, our customers aren't seeing ransomware, but they are seeing in cyber insurance policies, is they're running it through ChatGPT to look for exceptions in the contract. So, ChatGPT is a great little outsourced lawyer. So you can actually load your policy up and say, hey, where do you think there's some exceptions that I need to look for? So absolutely look at those. There's multiple providers of cyber insurance companies. So you really, you have some options there. And if you have a really mature program, you're going to be able to get cyber insurance, and you're not going to have to use it. That's the best part.
For sure, right? It's a good option, but it's not enough, right? It's not gonna cover everything. They find loopholes to not pay with. So another question we have from one of the audience here is he's wondering if an outsourced SOC team or on-demand SOC is as efficient as a local SOC. And I think regarding probably the knowledge of the tech stack at the company, how much does it take for a SOC that is outsourced to get into that stack and solve the issue?
Yeah. So I've run 4 MSSPs and run SOCs within individual companies, and it's all about if you have enough budget, if you have enough experts, and if your SOC team is integrated with the company and it's able to work 24/7, then and your tools are good, an internal team will typically outperform an external team. But most companies, they don't have the ability to support a 24/7 SOC. Sometimes they don't have the best tools. A lot of companies are struggling with budget. So a lower cost outsourced SOC option is typically going to outperform, the one, man or woman, or, the person, just the individual, or just a couple people that are dealing with the 24/7 monitoring. So for smaller and medium-sized companies, typically an outsourced SOC is going to way outperform an understaffed, under-budgeted, lower personnel count internal SOC.
Okay, that's good to know. I would love to take another question. I'm just seeing that we're out of time this time. Though, please be in touch with us. Fill up the form. We'll be in touch. some of our team members will reach out to you. Maybe you'll even have the chance to talk to one of the person involved in this webinar. And thank you all for joining us today. And special thanks to Pete, Yoav, and Tom for this great presentation. See you soon.
Bye, everybody.